You're listening to Atoms, Motion, and the Void. Night Stories, a wonderful program of stories and music that rivals the moon in radiance. Chapter 4, Mr. Lady and Mrs. Sleeves. While there is little prettier in the world from a distance than a sea of corn pushed about by a plain wind, there is little in the world more terrifying than standing within such a pushed-about pretty corn sea. For it is a kind of knitted quicksand, the way it ties one up, the way it towers and shadows and holds one deeper and deeper into its blind center. One doesn't realize until one has entered how possible it might be to get lost forever in a cornfield. It is not uncommon in corn country, so I've heard, though perhaps it is a scarecrow sort of joke meant to ward off would-be corn poachers, to find a body or two in one's field come harvest time. All to say that this beauty and terror entailed together, and then doubly so, as I finally came and stood before Mrs. Lady. After telling me she'd initially taken me for a boy in a dirty sheet, Mrs. Lady returned to her thatching, leaving me to consider whether I might wonder, pointing out to her that she very much might be mistaken in her assessment, for she surely meant the girl in the sackcloth. In fact, I said exactly this excessively roundabout and pulverized thing. "I wonder," I said, "if I might think to consider pointing out to you that you very much may be mistaken in your assessment, for surely you mean the girl in the sackcloth," which wild weed of an inquiry caused Mrs. Lady momentarily to cease her homemaking. "There's two of them," she finally said, "yours and mine, boy and girl, sheet and sackcloth, only mine has a red light in his eye rather than a green light in his neck." While somewhat concerned to learn of the presence of yet a second monitor in the form of this boy in a dirty sheet, I was more so at the moment relieved that my purpose of bringing my neck-lighted girl into combat of sorts with Mrs. Lady's light-loving chickens could now be more cleanly dispatched. After proposing just that scenario, I concluded, "And so I wonder if you wouldn't mind if I sort of roved about your chickens." "And then," Mrs. Lady said, drawing two unwilling cornstalks together overhead. "And then," I answered, "if my plan holds, the girl in the sackcloth will eventually make an appearance." "And then," Mrs. Lady said, as she tangled one ear of corn upon another, as though buttoning a button to a second button. "And then," I said, now feeling mildly grilled, "your chickens will—" And here I made an unattractive arm-thrusting gesture, by which I meant to indicate a kind of gentle attack. "They'll kill her," Mrs. Lady said. "No, of course not," I said. "Ideally, somehow, as I imagine it, they will subdue her," to which Mrs. Lady and-then'd me anew. "And then," I said, "I will simply ask her the purpose of her monitoring, why she watches me. Perhaps I could even ask why the boy watches you, as surely the answers must be similar. And then find out how they've made their way into our dream," Mrs. Lady said. "Our dreams, yes," I said, although I hadn't imagined we'd both been subjected to the same unconscious experiment. "Dream," Mrs. Lady said firmly. "Single, shared. We're both there on the island. I see you every night, and every night you don't see me. But let me ask you a question. Are you prepared?" "I am prepared," I said, which pre-question yet served to disprepare me. "What usually happens, generally?" she asked. An answerless, wide as the universe sort of question I felt, and yet she stopped construction of her corn house as she waited for my response. "I suppose," I said, "that what usually happens, generally, is what should happen." "What should happen almost never happens," she said. "No, what usually happens. Think, Mr. Lady." I thought, or didn't. All I could think was that I had never been able to think when asked to do so. I put a finger on my lip and tapped. "What could happen is what usually happens," she said. "Now do you know what never happens?" I shrugged. "What never happens is what can't happen. Would you agree?" I shrugged again, yet in a defeated way that suggested my agreement. "And yet you and I are experiencing what never happens in the form of what can't happen. What is happening to us, Mr. Lady, can't happen, and yet it is. And yet you want to stop it. You want to catch it with birds and peck it to bits and hang those bits from a little tree and dance around the tree until the bits dry up and the tree dies, and then, Mr. Lady, you will cut down that tree and burn it in your wood stove and forget forever that something that can't happen for a short time happened to you." That seemed a contestably cruel summation of what I was after, but I allowed myself to suppose she had a point, as she was, generally, winning the conversation, if such a thing is possible. "I only want to know what it is," I said. "What she is, who she is, why she does what she does. I don't want to peck her to bits, or dance around any tree, or hang those bits, or burn things, or forget things. But," Mrs. Lady said, "what it is that is happening is something that never happens. When something that never happens happens, and whoever it happens to wants to find out what exactly it is by attacking it with chickens and burning it in his wood stove, do you know what happens?" "Not as yet," I said. "It ceases to happen. So by all means embed yourself amongst my chickens, subdue the girl in the sackcloth, and let whatever it is that is happening and can't happen cease to happen, if that is your wish. As for myself, I will go the other, more surrendered way, as I am perfectly happy, increasingly happy, to more than allow it to happen to its fullest extent. But just before that happens, it just so happens, I happen to be in need of you, in momentary small need of you. And so, if you wouldn't mind doing me a minor favor in this evening's dream, I would be more than happy to let you do with my chickens and your sackcloth girl what you wish. But tomorrow, do you agree?" I said that I supposed I could wait one more day. "I've lived in this corn hut for nearly a month. Why exactly, I'm not sure. But I dreamt that I should, as you likely dreamt that you should move to the cave, which dreams, I believe, were installed in us both by our monitors," Mrs. Lady said. "But consider, here I have lived for the last month, eating handfuls of hard corn, drinking water from meadow muckholes that I have to filter through my socks. Every night my corn stalks unfasten, for living corn refuses, constitutionally, to be a home, and so I then have to labor each day to re-knit this wigwam into habitable shape. Whereas you live in a trouble-free cave. You eat of the sweet berries of the forest, drink of the cool, clean silver stream of the wood. And then come dream time, there you are, toddling out from your cave, so befuddled and dumbfounded, though you practically live there. And oh, you come down the strand and wander up and down the beach, or climb to the top of the island and write in your journal of a hand with your finger of a pen. And you stroll right past me a dozen times. I'm right there, and yet you do nothing to help me." "Well, I haven't seen you, as yet, unfortunately," I said. "You've looked me right in the eye. You've playfully chucked me on the head. You've sat on me," Mrs. Lady said. For my part, I couldn't recall any of this. I should certainly remember sitting on you, I said. But if I did, I suppose I wasn't aware. Can you not speak up? Shake me. I'm obviously not fully in my own mind. Honestly, I'm not sure why this is my lone responsibility. Why don't you find me, in point of fact? Why not move or request I sit elsewhere? Here, Mrs. Lady's brow furrowed and darkened. She unearthed a small sigh, like a little mouse come up from an unseen pocket. The indignity, she said. It hardly makes any sense. Why should it be so very, very easy for you? Cave, berries, stream, the life of Riley. You'd think on the island things would go in the reverse, as so many other things have. But no, I cannot find you. I cannot shake you. I cannot speak a word. But the sad truth, the unbelievable and wretched truth, is that I, on the island, am off. There, I've said it. I am off. You are off, I repeated. I have been switched off, as near as I can tell, or am barely on, or very low on power, but yes or no. I cannot call or move or shout or shake or speak, or even move my eye, and I have only the one. I can only blinklessly barely see with my one dim eye. And who do you think remains in my monovision the entire dream? Old doddering Life of Riley himself, you, Mr. Lady. The only comforting or relieving moment I have is watching the enormous wave come pummeling down over you. Of course it hits me too, but not until I've seen it clobber you. But yes, if you wouldn't mind, I would rather like it if this evening you might at last acknowledge me and not sit on me and find my switch and turn me on. And I'll take it from there. And then tomorrow you may unfurl your great chicken plan and burn your impossible mystery for its unneeded heat, whereas I shall then continue my adventure on the island, alone, yes, but now happily switched on and under my own sail, so to speak. I digested this a moment. So, you have a switch, I finally said, to which Mrs. Lady only looked upward into the corn and then downward at me, and I knew she was picturing the David Titan collapsing gratifyingly over my dim, dumb Life of Riley self. The old man's coming with his Life of Riley life. Ain't got no job, just make shadows in the light. I've got my eye on the ground, got my feet in the air, I'm not fooling around. Every moment's erased, but the sun on my face means I'm not underground. I ain't nothing but clouds in the sky of this town. I make all of the sound. Got my eye on the ground, got my feet in the air, I'm just fooling around. And the morning that he woke up and realized the way he'd been living in the gutter, how he'd fallen down the drain. There's no warning to remember that it's a dream and not a game. As a dream it has no ending, as a game it doesn't play. But if you put away the pieces and skip your turn today, and go walking through the morning in a Life of Riley way, then your dream would be a living, and your living would be fair. And that fairness, like a weather, and that weather like a prayer, and that prayer would last forever, in the wind as a refrain that goes walking through the morning, asking all to do the same. Riley's life seemed far too simple, and he never would explain how he had to take it easy to bear the universal pain. To bear the universal pain. Up and over the mossy cliffs I went, as the sky now burned in crimson belts, and the sweet, mentholated scent of evening pine crept down from the cooler mountain top. I drank a little from the stream, ate a few of the berries, but the idea of Mrs. Lady eating hard kernels of corn and drinking muck water sieved through socks disinclined my appetite, and as the night came on and I entered the cave, I said out loud, and to make use of the cavern's sonorous repetitions, "The life of Riley, indeed." I lay down on my little cave bed, and as I closed my eyes, I imagined I could feel the girl's nearing presence. She could do what she liked tonight. As tomorrow, I thought, chickens, absolute chickens, and nowhere to run. I've got you now. Finally, my catchphrase would catch. As I drifted off to sleep, I imagined the preposterous chickens careening after the girl, little eyes drilling for the light in her neck. And despite her swift and godly retreat, she proved no match for the dong-dong Charlie Winrums and the pink-legged Franklin Henrys. And then as I saw myself standing over her, and just as I pulled the chickens aside to begin my inquisition, I woke in my cave on the island. A dream. I yawned and stretched pleasantly and gazed down at the curious garbage beneath my feet. Wires and plastic utility boards dotted with diodes and receptors and whatever it is that makes such things the things they are. Though the David Titan threatened on the horizon, I felt especially good. And then, I wondered, wasn't there a chorish little something or other I was meant to do, a task or bit of bother, the equivalent of tying my own shoes, or someone else's shoes? Could it be that? Well, if I came upon anyone with untied shoes, I would tie them, but otherwise the task evaded me. I strolled out along the Strand and took a seat on an antique television or computer monitor, and suddenly began to write in my journal of a hand with the pen of my finger. I may be too preoccupied, I wrote, too small-minded, too peaceful, despite the imminent disaster, to find you and tie your shoes, or otherwise turn you on. Even that didn't do it, not right away. I wandered unsuccessfully for a time, and then began to read the lines out loud, over and over, to jog my memory. And then, suddenly, I recalled, Mrs. Lady. She is here, somewhere, on the island. I jumped up with such unfamiliar agility and strength that I remembered that I was no longer in my own body, but that of the sackcloth girls. I kneeled, youthfully, girlishly perhaps, not old-manishly, at any event, down to examine the old television. A rounded square of grey glassy screen stared back, dull, lifeless. My hands fell around the monitor itself, where I found nothing, not a single button or switch to be switched. Below the box, however, on either side of the descending, neck-like column, was a broken knob and rusty dial, and from the bottom of this a stream of cabling unraveled. Mrs. Lady, I said to the box. I knocked it once, as one does to better reception. Nothing. I let my hands trickle down to the column and began to spin the broken knob and rusty dial this way and that. There was a small, almost animal whir from somewhere within the box, and at the very center of the screen, a fluorescent star shot to life. "Mrs. Lady," I said helplessly to this little dot. I listened close, pressed my ear to the screen, and despite the David Titan roaring horribly all around me, I could hear the tiniest, pippiest of squeaks. I fiddled the knob again. The little dot faded. I fiddled back, and the dot jumped to life. I then worked the opposing rusty dial, drawing the sound up considerably.
"Mr. Lady,"
a scratchy voice called out.
"can you hear me? Can you please help me up?"
I lifted the monitor, drawing up the loose column and the dragging snake pit of filaments and wires. And because many of these appeared trapped under the piles of jetsam, I began to haul Mrs. Lady away and down toward the beach.
"What on earth are you doing? Release me at once. Mr. Lady, you are manhandling me."
Finally breathless, her wires free and clear, I craned the monitor around that Mrs. Lady's dot might bear witness to the state of her not quite existent body. "I'm afraid," I said, "that you are lacking a good deal of the expected and familiar anatomy."
"In what way?"
she said. "Well, legs and arms and those sorts of parts one comes to expect of oneself," I said. "You are simply a kind of unusual thing."
"In what way?"
she said again. "Well," I said, "your head, for example, is not a head precisely, but a kind of box or computer screen or television, if you prefer. And then the rest of you is mostly those wires and cables there that you see dangling off over the strand."
"Swing me about,"
Mrs. Lady commanded.
"I want to see a panorama."
I slowly panned her monitor about, moving a little quicker during the section that included the imminently arriving David Titan, and then slowing again on the island itself, unpicturesque though it was.
"Back,
She ordered, and reluctantly I spun her back.
"Stop! Do you see it?"
She said. "I do," I said, for I assumed she meant the massive deadly wave bearing down on us. "We do have a good few minutes before it falls, however."
"Not the wave, the wall. Do you see it?"
Of course I did. In fact, I reminded her that while this might have been her first time seeing it, I was quite the old hand as far as the wall.
"But you don't recognize it?"
I said that I had never elsewhere in my life seen a wall so vast, so tall, so set in the sea, so far away.
"The lightly pink stone.
She said.
The way the rocks are turned and nearly acquit themselves as a random pile, as though they fell into their wall shape rather than being placed. Think, Mr. Lady."
Not a thought, of course, came, which comforted me in some way, as I felt some connection to my real self.
"That is the work of Mr. Goodwin Sand,"
Mrs. Lady said.
"That great sea wall is an almost exact replica of the wall that surrounds his Glister Hall."
While Mrs. Lady was quite taken with this, I, on the other hand, had turned my attention to the first drops, the sort of peevish rainstorm that preceded the downfall of the David Titan. "We shall be done for any moment now," I reminded her.
"Listen,
She demanded.
tomorrow, before the chickens, you must go to Glister Hall, climb the wall, go to him, ask Goodwin Sand where my body is. And then tomorrow night, in our dream, you must salvage me. You must find my pieces, at the very least my legs, and one arm. Will you do that?"
I believe I nodded here, but the initial Titan buckets were upon us, and I had shifted into a new, rather proud mood, for it occurred to me that it might make for a very fine gesture and something that could later pay dividends if I turned Mrs. Lady off at this point, just before the wave crashed, that she not suffer through its violent consequence. And so I let my hand lower down to her knob and dial, and I congratulated myself as a kind of old-fashioned hero of great forethought as I first turned Mrs. Lady's volume dial all the way down, and then switched her knob off. "I'll take it from here," I said to the departing flicker of the fluorescent dot of Mrs. Lady. I next commenced a quite dramatic monologue against the upscaling pile of seawater as it dove skywardly in preface to its final lunge. I said something here about women and children first, and how the captain goes down with the ship. I said something about taking the brunt of the beast full on in the maw, that all the pain of the event should be mine, that I and I alone would die in fullness in the dream, that she might not. And then as I turned my face upward into the cascade, and my mouth filled with salted sea, I gurgled a last something about standing alone beneath the entire aquatic majesty, and the wave fell and drove fully through me, crushing both my body and my championship speech into hero smithereens. We all come drowning in the deep blue sea. Hard to find an island that will care for thee. Rowing all alone and singing merrily. Hard to figure out when someone rescues thee. I know your hands tied, you're blowing out the fire, but you help me push my boat out on the wave. I know your hands tied, you're blowing out the fire, but you help me push my boat out on the wave. I was out of drowning in the deep blue sea. Couldn't find an island that would care for me. Rowing all alone and singing merrily, a song I wrote about a man helped rescue me. I know your hands tied, you're blowing out the fire, but you help me push my boat out on the waves. I know your hands tied, you're blowing out the fire, but you help me push my boat out on the waves. I know your hands tied, you're blowing out the fire, but you help me push my boat out on the wave. But you help me push my boat out on the waves. I woke in the cave with an instant sense of misgiving, Oh, my dearest, dearie dearness. I shouldn't I, have left Mrs. Lady switched on? Was she now rousing in her as yet still unfastening corn hut, fuming at my island heroics? In fact, I realized in my fit of bravery that I may have turned her more completely off than the off she was familiar with. Perhaps, waking in this evening's dream, she would be entirely blind, or perhaps even less than that. But then, even still and regardless, and she would have to see this, even if I had left her on, she was, nevertheless, an old and broken and armless and legless television set. The very notion of going to Glister Hall and asking Goodwin Sand for the whereabouts of Mrs. Lady's body made me moan aloud. Oh. Firstly, why in the world would he know? Yes, perhaps there was some similarity in the two walls. But why would that mean that Goodwin Sand knew anything about Mrs. Lady's arms or legs? Nor, secondly, on a basic level, was there a chance that I could scale the 10-foot wall around Glister Hall? I could climb mountains or stairs, yes. I could even run a bit, as recently, if poorly demonstrated, but my scaling years were long behind me. Third, as far as I knew, no one had spoken to Goodwin Sand in years. In fact, there was a rumor that he, or perhaps his brother, was dead. Perhaps even that they were the same person, and dead. Or some such approximation where dead was the considered conclusion of either conjecture. But as I finally came free of the cave, and did my first roamings out into the sunlight and the happy reality of reality itself, of my familiar talus field, and the cool silver stream in the nearby woods, with my berry patch breakfast waiting, I realized one other bit of salience, for I recalled that today was the day that the wall sheet at Glister Hall was due to be taken down for cleaning. Explaining what a wall sheet is and why it must be taken down for cleaning will require some later explanation. But it was quite simply the case that on this day alone, I wouldn't need to scale Goodwin Sand's wall, as a small cloth section of it would be removed, and I would surely not encounter the man, missing or dead as he seemed to be, and given such a remote chance of encounter, I could at least pretend to be steadfast about inquiring after Mrs. Lady's arms and legs upon meeting him. I could therefore then leverage this goodwill attempt, together with an assertion that regardless of whether or not Mrs. Lady's monitor head was turned on or off at the dream's conclusion, she herself gained nothing by it. She was a bodiless boxhead on a garbage island in a movie-like dream, sinisterly installed by a youthful boy and girl, both of whom were unnaturally outfitted with light bulbs. I drank of the stream. I ate of the berries. I headed off for Goodwin Sand and his wall at Glister Hall. You've been listening to Atoms, Motion, and the Void. For more information on the show, please visit my website at radioghost.com. And if you wish to follow me in person, you may find me on Market Mountain in Lemon, New Hampshire, or on the Trash Island in the Mysterious Dream. If you wish to follow me in the mysterious world we live in, You may find me on Twitter and Facebook at Show and Sleeves. Feel free or unfree, as your way attends, to write me at showandsleeves@yahoo.com, or simply call out into the void itself, for I am always listening. Thank you, my friends, and remember, always merry and bright.